I was eating a ham sandwich in my driveway when a silver Lexus SUV plowed into the rear bumper of my parked Ford F-150, and I watched my lunch hit the pavement in slow motion. The crunch of metal was followed by the squeal of brakes, then silence. I stood there for a moment, processing what just happened, before the driver's door of the Lexus opened, and out stepped Brenda Kensington, president of the Meadowbrook Heights Homeowners Association, wearing a cream-colored pantsuit and an expression that somehow blamed me for her mistake. "Your truck was sticking out too far," she said, not even asking if I was okay or apologizing for destroying my rear bumper. She adjusted her oversized sunglasses and pursed her lips like she'd just tasted something sour. I blinked. "Brenda, you just drove into my truck. In my driveway." "It was protruding into the street," she insisted, pulling out her phone. "I'm documenting this. The HOA covenant clearly states that vehicles must be parked completely within property boundaries. My truck wasn't even close to the street. I'd measured it myself when I first moved into this neighborhood in Gilbert, Arizona, 2 years ago. The whole truck sat a good 3 feet from the sidewalk, well within my property line. But Brenda wasn't interested in facts. She never was. Are you serious right now?" I asked, walking toward my truck to inspect the damage. The rear bumper was dented inward, the taillight shattered, and there was a nasty scrape along the paint. "You hit my parked truck." "Because it shouldn't have been there," Brenda said, typing rapidly on her phone. "I'll be filing an incident report with the board. You should expect a formal citation by end of business today." I turned to face her fully. "Brenda, you're going to pay for this damage. Your insurance, my insurance, will be hearing about your non-compliant vehicle placement," she interrupted. "Furthermore, I noticed your truck lacks the required reflective safety tape outlined in Section 12, Subsection D of the updated HOA guidelines distributed last month." I stared at her. "Reflective tape? What are you talking about?" "All vehicles parked overnight in driveways must have reflective safety tape on the rear bumper to prevent exactly this type of incident," she said, gesturing at the damage she'd caused. "If your truck had been properly marked, I would have seen it." "It's 2 in the afternoon," I said slowly. "And there's nothing in the HOA rules about reflective tape." "The amendment passed at the April board meeting," Brenda said smugly, "which you would know if you attended meetings like a responsible homeowner." I had attended that meeting. There had been no discussion about reflective tape. The whole thing had been about pool hours and a debate over whether the community should switch to desert landscaping. But arguing with Brenda Kensington was like arguing with a brick wall that had a law degree and too much time on its hands. "I'm calling the police," I said, pulling out my phone. "Go ahead," Brenda said. "They'll cite you for the parking violation." The Gilbert Police Department sent Officer Martinez, a patient-looking woman in her 30s who'd probably dealt with HOA disputes more times than she cared to count. She took statements from both of us, examined the scene, and measured the distance from my truck to the street curb. "Mr. Richardson, how long has your vehicle been parked here?" Officer Martinez asked me. "Since last night," I said. "Around 8 p.m. She nodded and made notes. "And it hasn't moved?" "Not an inch." Officer Martinez turned to Brenda. "Madam, can you explain what happened from your perspective?" "I was conducting my routine neighborhood inspection," Brenda began, "when I came around the corner and this truck appeared out of nowhere. I had to swerve to avoid a collision but unfortunately made contact." "The truck was parked," I interjected. "Completely stationary." Officer Martinez held up a hand. "Madam, were you looking at your phone while driving?" Brenda's face tightened. "I was using my phone to document violations, yes, but I'm an experienced driver and perfectly capable of." Were you looking at your phone at the moment of impact? Officer Martinez pressed. Brenda didn't answer immediately, which was answer enough. Officer Martinez wrote several more notes, took photos of the damage, the tire marks on the street, and the measurements. Mr. Richardson, your vehicle is parked completely within your property boundaries. Miss Kensington, I'm citing you for distracted driving and failure to maintain control of your vehicle. You'll need to exchange insurance information with Mr. Richardson. This is absurd, Brenda said, her voice rising. He's in violation of HOA regulations. HOA regulations don't supersede traffic law, Officer Martinez said firmly. You struck a legally parked vehicle while using your phone. That's distracted driving. I felt a small surge of satisfaction watching Brenda's face turn red. She thrust her insurance card at me like it was a subpoena, then got back in her Lexus and drove off without another word. Officer Martinez gave me a copy of the incident report and advised me to document everything for insurance purposes. Word of advice, she said before leaving. Get a dash cam. Maybe one of those that records even when the car's parked. HOA disputes in this area tend to escalate. I thanked her and went inside, my sandwich long forgotten on the driveway. My wife wasn't going to believe this. Actually, I didn't have a wife. I'd moved to Gilbert after my divorce finalized, looking for a fresh start in a quiet suburban neighborhood. Meadowbrook Heights had seemed perfect at first, with its palm tree-lined streets, community pool, and well-maintained common areas. But I'd quickly learned that Brenda Kensington ran the HOA like a feudal kingdom, and she was the kind of ruler who believed in absolute authority. I called my insurance company and filed a claim, then called Brenda's insurer to report the accident. They were professional and sympathetic, said they'd be in touch. I figured that would be the end of it. File the claim, get the truck repaired, move on with life. I should have known better. 3 days later, I found an official-looking envelope in my mailbox with the Meadowbrook Heights HOA logo embossed on the corner. Inside was a notice of violation and fine assessment on HOA letterhead. Dear Mr. Frank Richardson, it began. This letter serves as formal notice that you are in violation of Meadowbrook Heights Homeowners Association Covenant Section 12, subsection D, regarding vehicle safety compliance. Your Ford F-150, license plate AZ 827 JKM, has been observed parked overnight without required reflective safety tape on the rear bumper. This violation poses a safety hazard to the community and contributed to the vehicular incident on May 14, 2026. You are hereby fined $250, payable within 15 days. Additionally, you are billed $1,200 for repairs to HOA property damaged during said incident. Failure to pay will result in a lien against your property. I read it twice, then a third time. She was billing me for damage to HOA property. What HOA property? She'd hit my truck in my driveway, and there was no rule about reflective tape. I was certain of it. I dug out my copy of the HOA covenants and spent the next hour reading through every section. Section 12. Covered vehicle regulations. No boats or RVs parked in driveways for more than 48 hours. No commercial vehicles with business logos. No inoperable vehicles. Nothing about reflective tape. I checked my email for the minutes from the April board meeting. The secretary, a retired accountant named Tom, always sent detailed notes. I scrolled through them. Pool hours, landscaping discussion, a motion to repair the community mailbox kiosk. No amendments, no reflective tape. Brenda had made it up. The next morning, I drove to the HOA office, located in a small building near the community center. The office manager, Patricia, was a kind woman in her 50s who'd always been helpful when I had questions about trash pickup or community events. "Frank," she said warmly when I walked in. "What can I do for you?" I showed her the violation notice. "Patricia, can you show me where this rule about reflective tape is written?" She frowned and read the letter. "Reflective tape? I don't remember anything about that. Brenda says it was amended in April." Patricia turned to her computer and pulled up the HOA database. "Let me check the meeting minutes and amendment log." She clicked through several screens, her frown deepening. "There's no amendment from April about vehicle reflective tape. The last vehicle-related amendment was in 2024, about the commercial vehicle restriction." "So this rule doesn't exist," I said. "Not according to our records," Patricia said carefully. "But Brenda is the president. Maybe it's something the board discussed that hasn't been formally documented yet." "Can a rule be enforced before it's documented and homeowners are notified?" Patricia shifted uncomfortably. "Technically, no. All covenant amendments require a vote, documentation, and 30 days notice to homeowners before enforcement. So this fine is bogus." "I can't say that officially," Patricia said, lowering her voice. "But between you and me, you should dispute it. Submit a written objection to the board. They meet next Thursday." I thanked Patricia and went home to draft my objection letter. I kept it professional and factual. No such rule existed in the covenants. No amendment had been properly documented or communicated, and the fine was therefore invalid. I also addressed the $1,200 repair bill, noting that Brenda had struck my vehicle and been cited by police for distracted driving, making her liable for damages, not me. I submitted the letter both by email and physical mail, certified with return receipt. Then I waited. The response came not from the board, but from Brenda personally. She called me at 7 a.m. on a Saturday. "Mr. Richardson, your insubordinate letter to the board has been noted," she said without preamble. "Your refusal to comply with association rules is exactly the kind of entitled behavior that undermines community standards." "The rule doesn't exist, Brenda," I said, still groggy from sleep. Patricia confirmed it. "Patricia is an office manager, not a board member," Brenda snapped. "I am the president of this HOA and I'm telling you the rule exists. The board voted on it." "Then show me the documentation. Show me the meeting minutes, the vote count, the notice sent to homeowners." Silence on the other end. Then, "The documentation is being processed. Your fine stands. If you don't pay by the deadline, we'll proceed with the lien." She hung up. I stood in my kitchen, staring at my phone, and realized Officer Martinez had been right about things escalating. Brenda wasn't going to back down. She'd rather double down on a lie than admit she was wrong. I needed a lawyer. I found one through a friend's recommendation. Michael Torres, an attorney in Scottsdale who specialized in HOA disputes. His reviews were excellent and his consultation fee was reasonable. I met with him on Monday afternoon, bringing all my documentation: the violation notice, the police report, my insurance claim, the HOA covenants, the meeting minutes, and my correspondence with Patricia and Brenda. Michael was in his early 40s, sharp-eyed and methodical. He reviewed everything carefully, making notes on a legal pad. "This is pretty clear-cut," he said finally. "The rule she's citing doesn't exist. She can't enforce something that isn't in the governing documents, and she definitely can't bill you for damage she caused. So what do I do?" "First, we send a formal cease and desist letter to the HOA and to Brenda personally. We cite the law, demand they rescind the fine and the bill, and warn them that any attempt to place a lien will result in legal action. Second, we file a complaint with the Arizona Department of Real Estate if they don't comply. HOAs are required to follow state law, and making up rules is a violation. Will that be enough? If they're reasonable, yes. If not, we can sue. And honestly, based on what you've told me about this Brenda Kensington, I'd say there's a pattern of behavior here. Has she done this to other homeowners? I thought about it. I'd heard complaints at community events, seen angry posts in the neighborhood Facebook group. Last year, Brenda had tried to fine a neighbor for painting their front door navy blue instead of the approved black, claiming navy was unauthorized. The neighbor had repainted it, but the whole thing had been ridiculous. I think so, I said, but I don't have proof. Might be worth asking around, Michael said. If there's a pattern of harassment or abuse of authority, that strengthens your case significantly. I hired Michael on the spot. He drafted the cease and desist letter that afternoon, and I left his office feeling like I finally had some leverage. The letter went out via certified mail and email. 2 days later, I got a response from the HOA's attorney, a guy named Randall Stevens from a law firm in Phoenix. His letter was professional but dismissive, claiming that the HOA president had authority to implement safety regulations as needed, and that my objections were frivolous and vexatious. Michael replied immediately, shredding every argument in Stevens's letter. He cited Arizona revised statutes governing HOAs, pointed out the lack of documentation, and included Patricia's email confirming no such amendment existed. He also mentioned that we were prepared to countersue for harassment and abuse of process if the fine wasn't rescinded within 7 days. Things got quiet after that. Too quiet. Then my truck got towed. I woke up one morning, looked out my window, and my F-150 was gone. In its place was a notice staked into my lawn. Vehicle removed for HOA violation. Contact Gilbert Towing at 480-555-0147. I called the number, my hands shaking with anger. The tow company told me my truck had been towed at the request of the Meadowbrook Heights HOA for being an abandoned and non-compliant vehicle. It would cost $375 to retrieve it, plus a $50 daily storage fee. I called Michael Torres immediately. They did what? He said, and I heard the anger in his voice. Towed my truck this morning. That's illegal. They can't tow a vehicle from private property without proper notice and due process. Get your truck back. Keep all the receipts, and we're filing suit today. I drove to the impound lot, paid the ransom, and got my truck back. The total cost was $425 because they counted the partial day as a full day. I got itemized receipts for everything. By that afternoon, Michael had filed a lawsuit in Maricopa County Superior Court against the Meadowbrook Heights HOA and Brenda Kensington personally. The complaint alleged harassment, abuse of authority, illegal towing, and violation of Arizona HOA statutes. We were seeking damages for the towing fees, emotional distress, and attorney fees. I also filed a police report about the illegal towing. The officer who took my report, a young guy named Officer Davies, said it was a civil matter but documented everything in case it became part of a larger case. The lawsuit seemed to wake up the rest of the HOA board. I got a call from Tom, the board secretary, that evening. "Frank, I just saw the lawsuit," he said. "I had no idea any of this was happening. Brenda never brought your dispute to the full board. She's been acting alone, apparently." I talked to the other board members today. Nobody authorized a tow. Nobody voted on any reflective tape rule. Brenda has been doing all of this on her own authority. Can she do that? No, Tom said firmly. The president doesn't have unilateral authority to create rules or authorize towing. That requires board votes. We're calling an emergency meeting tomorrow night. Can you attend? Absolutely. The emergency board meeting was held in the community center, and the room was packed. Word had spread through the neighborhood about the lawsuit, and apparently I wasn't the only homeowner who'd had problems with Brenda. There were at least 40 people there, many of them angry. The board sat at a table up front. Tom, a woman named Susan Chen, and a younger guy named Derek Palmer. Brenda sat at the center, stone-faced. Tom called the meeting to order. "We're here to address concerns about recent HOA enforcement actions. Mr. Richardson, would you like to present your case?" I stood and outlined everything: the accident, the fake rule, the bogus fines, the illegal towing. I kept my voice calm and stuck to facts. When I finished, at least a dozen hands shot up. A woman in her 60s stood. "Brenda fined me $500 last month for having my garbage cans visible from the street. They were out for trash pickup, which is allowed. When I disputed it, she threatened to foreclose on my house." A younger man spoke up. "She sent me a violation notice for my son's basketball hoop. Said portable hoops weren't allowed. There's nothing about that in the rules. When I pushed back, she had my car booted." More stories poured out. Brenda had been running the HOA like a personal fiefdom, making up rules, issuing fines, and retaliating against anyone who questioned her. Some people had paid the bogus fines just to avoid the hassle. Others had moved out of the neighborhood entirely. Susan Chen, the board member, looked horrified. "Brenda, is all of this true? These people are exaggerating," Brenda said coldly. "I've been enforcing community standards that the rest of you are too spineless to uphold." "You don't have authority to create rules," Tom said. "That requires board votes and homeowner notice. I'm the president. I have discretionary authority to interpret and enforce the covenants." "You have authority to enforce existing rules," Derek said, "not make up new ones." The meeting devolved into chaos, with homeowners shouting questions and accusations. Finally, Tom banged a gavel and called for order. "The board is calling for an immediate vote of no confidence in President Kensington," Tom announced. "All in favor?" Susan and Derek both raised their hands. "All opposed?" Brenda raised her hand alone, glaring at her colleagues. "The motion carries," Tom said. "Brenda, you're removed as HOA president effective immediately. We'll be conducting a full audit of your actions and finances." Brenda stood, grabbed her purse, and pointed a finger at me. "This isn't over, Mr. Richardson. You'll regret this." She stormed out of the community center. The room erupted in applause. Tom adjourned the meeting and asked me to stay after. He apologized profusely on behalf of the board and promised that all bogus fines would be rescinded and refunded. The HOA would also reimburse me for the towing fees and my attorney costs. "We're going to review every enforcement action she took in the past year," Tom said. "If she violated state law, we'll report it to the authorities." I thanked him and went home, feeling a mix of relief and exhaustion. It was finally over. Except it wasn't. 2 days later, I woke to find my truck vandalized. Someone had keyed deep scratches along both sides, slashed 2 tires, and spray-painted snitch across the hood in red letters. I called the police immediately. Officer Martinez responded, along with a detective named Harris. They took photos, dusted for prints, and canvassed the neighborhood for security cameras. "You have any idea who might have done this?" Detective Harris asked. "I have a pretty good guess," I said, and told him about Brenda. "We'll follow up with her," he said. "In the meantime, get those cameras your officer suggested, sooner rather than later." I had the truck towed to a body shop for repairs, then went straight to an electronics store and bought 3 high-definition security cameras with night vision and motion detection. I spent the afternoon installing them to cover my driveway, front yard, and the street. The insurance adjuster estimated the vandalism damage at $4,200. Combined with the accident damage, my truck was practically a write-off, though they agreed to repair it. That night, around 2 a.m., my phone buzzed with a motion alert from the cameras. I pulled up the app and saw a figure in dark clothing approaching my driveway. I couldn't see their face, but they were carrying something. I called 911 and kept watching the feed. The figure moved toward my garage door and started spraying something. Paint, I realized. They were vandalizing my garage. Gilbert police are 3 minutes away, the dispatcher told me. Stay inside and keep your doors locked. I watched the figure continue spraying, then suddenly look up as police sirens approached. They dropped the spray can and ran, but they didn't get far. 2 patrol cars cut them off at the end of the street. I went outside as officers put the person in handcuffs. When they pulled back the hood, I wasn't surprised to see Brenda Kensington's furious face. "I didn't do anything," she shouted. "This is harassment. That man has been targeting me." "Madam, we have video of you spray painting his garage," Officer Martinez said. "You're under arrest for criminal trespassing and criminal damage." They read Brenda her rights and put her in the patrol car. Detective Harris arrived and retrieved the spray can as evidence, then reviewed my camera footage. "This is pretty clear-cut," he said. "We'll compare the paint to what was used on your truck. If it matches, we can probably add those charges too." "Will this stick?" I asked. "Oh yeah." And given her position in the HOA and the pattern of harassment you described, the DA will probably take this seriously. They took my statement and a copy of the camera footage, then left. I stood in my driveway at 3 in the morning, looking at the half-finished graffiti on my garage door. Brenda had spray-painted "lawsuit" in red letters before getting caught. The next morning, the whole neighborhood knew. The arrest made the local news. HOA president arrested for vandalism in Gilbert. The story detailed the charges and mentioned the ongoing dispute over bogus fines and illegal towing. My phone rang constantly. Neighbors calling to apologize, to offer support, to share their own Brenda horror stories. The HOA board called an emergency meeting to discuss hiring an attorney to cooperate with the criminal investigation. Michael Torres called around noon. "Frank, I just saw the news. You okay?" "I'm fine. Tired, but fine. This actually helps our civil case significantly. The DA's office will probably want to talk to you about her pattern of behavior, and the other board members might want to join the lawsuit to recover HOA funds she misused." Misused? Tom called me this morning. They did a preliminary audit and found that Brenda has been depositing some fine payments into a personal account. We're talking potentially thousands of dollars in embezzlement. I sat down heavily. "You're kidding." "Nope. This is bigger than harassment now. This is fraud, embezzlement, and criminal vandalism. She's in serious trouble." The investigation moved quickly after that. The HOA's audit revealed that Brenda had collected over $43,000 in bogus fines over the past 18 months, depositing them into an account separate from the HOA's official finances. She'd been pocketing the money. The Arizona Department of Real Estate opened an investigation. The Maricopa County Attorney's Office brought formal charges: fraud, embezzlement, criminal damage, and harassment. Brenda hired a high-priced criminal defense attorney, but the evidence was overwhelming. The paint on my truck matched the spray paint she'd been caught with. My camera footage showed her vandalizing my garage. The HOA's financial records proved embezzlement. Her own emails and letters documented the harassment and fake fines. Tom and the board sent a letter to every homeowner in Meadowbrook Heights, apologizing for Brenda's actions and promising reforms. They hired a professional management company to handle day-to-day HOA operations and implemented new oversight procedures to prevent future abuse. Brenda's criminal trial was scheduled for September. In the meantime, she was out on bail with a restraining order preventing her from coming within 500 feet of me or HOA property. My truck was finally repaired in July, looking good as new. Brenda's insurance had covered the accident damage, and my insurance covered the vandalism after she was arrested. I'd gotten reimbursement for the towing fees from the HOA's insurance. The civil lawsuit settled out of court in August. The HOA's insurance paid my attorney fees and a $20,000 settlement for harassment and emotional distress. More importantly, Tom and the new board implemented real changes. Board decisions now required majority votes documented in official minutes. All fines required written notice with appeal procedures, and homeowners got copies of any covenant amendments 30 days before enforcement. Brenda's criminal trial lasted 3 days. The prosecution presented camera footage, financial records, witness testimony from dozens of homeowners, and expert analysis of her scheme. Her attorney tried to argue that she'd been overzealous but not criminal, that the financial irregularities were accounting errors. The jury didn't buy it. They convicted her on all counts after less than 2 hours of deliberation. The judge sentenced her in October. 5 years in prison, with credit for time served. Restitution of $43,000 to the HOA and affected homeowners. 3 years supervised probation after release, and a permanent ban from serving on any HOA board in Arizona. Miss Kensington, you abused a position of trust, the judge said during sentencing. You used your authority to harass, intimidate, and defraud your neighbors. You created fake rules to justify illegal fines, pocketed money meant for community improvements, and when confronted, you resorted to vandalism and intimidation. This court takes such abuse of power seriously. Brenda didn't react. She just stared straight ahead as bailiffs led her away. I attended the sentencing with several other homeowners who'd been victimized. Afterward, we went to lunch together, a strange but cathartic celebration. The woman who'd been fined for her garbage cans, whose name was Margaret, raised her iced tea. To Frank for having the guts to fight back, she said. Everyone clinked glasses. I felt embarrassed but grateful. I just wanted her to pay for hitting my truck, I said. I had no idea it would lead to all this. That's how these things work, Michael Torres said. He joined us for lunch. One person stands up, others find the courage to do the same. Brenda got away with her behavior for so long because people were afraid or thought fighting wasn't worth it. Is it worth it? The younger guy with the basketball hoop asked. His name was James. Michael considered the question. That depends on what you value: justice, community, principle. Then yes, absolutely. If you just want a quiet life with no hassles, maybe not. But personally, I think we have a responsibility to stand up to bullies, especially when they have power over us. I thought about that a lot over the following weeks. Had it been worth it? The stress, the legal fees, the vandalism, the months of conflict, yeah, it had, because Meadowbrook Heights was genuinely better now. The new board was reasonable and transparent. Community meetings were actually productive instead of Brenda's personal power trips. People felt safe in their own homes again, not worried about arbitrary fines for imaginary violations. . And beyond our neighborhood, the case had gotten attention. Local news did follow-up stories about HOA abuse in Arizona, prompting state legislators to propose new oversight regulations. Other homeowners in other communities reached out to Michael Torres, inspired to challenge their own rogue board members. One Saturday in November, I was washing my truck in the driveway when Tom stopped by. He was carrying a bottle of wine. "Peace offering," he said. "On behalf of the board, we know this year has been hell for you." "It's been an interesting year," I said diplomatically. "The community center is having a holiday party next month. We'd be honored if you came, maybe even said a few words." I almost declined, but then I thought about Margaret and James and all the other homeowners who'd found their voices because I'd found mine. "I'll be there," I said. The holiday party was packed, with families and kids and tables of food. The new board president, Susan Chen, gave a speech about community and accountability. Then she called me up. I hadn't prepared anything, so I just spoke from the heart. "Last May, someone crashed into my truck and tried to blame me for it," I began, and people laughed. At the time, I was just angry and wanted justice. But what happened after that? All of us coming together and demanding better, that meant something bigger. We proved that standing up to bullies works. That communities function best when everyone has a voice, not just whoever's in charge. And we proved that, even when someone tries to abuse their power, the system can work if good people are willing to fight for what's right. People applauded. Kids ran around chasing each other. Someone handed me a plate of cookies. It was a good night, a good ending to a terrible year. But here's the thing about endings. They're really just new beginnings. Because that experience changed how I thought about community involvement. I started attending HOA meetings regularly, not to complain, but to participate. When Susan's board term expired, I ran for a position and won. I served on the Meadowbrook Heights HOA board for 3 years, helping implement policies that protected homeowners while maintaining community standards. We created clear appeal processes, required transparency in all financial matters, and limited individual board members' authority to prevent another Brenda situation. Michael Torres and I became friends. He ended up representing several other homeowners in HOA disputes across Arizona, and I often testified as an expert witness about warning signs of board abuse. The state legislature passed new HOA regulations in 2027, partly inspired by Brenda's case. The laws required regular audits, limited boards' ability to create rules without homeowner votes, and established stronger penalties for embezzlement and harassment. Brenda Kensington served 3 years of her sentence before being released on parole. I never saw her again. According to Tom, she moved to New Mexico to live with her sister. I hoped she learned something from the experience, but honestly, I didn't think about her much. What I thought about instead was how a single moment, a crash in a driveway on an ordinary afternoon, could cascade into something so much larger. How standing up for yourself could inspire others to do the same. How systems designed to serve communities could be corrupted, but also reformed. My truck, fully repaired and running perfectly, became a symbol of sorts in the neighborhood. Kids called it the famous truck. New residents heard the story and always wanted to see where it happened. I'd show them, point out my driveway, and usually they'd laugh and say they couldn't believe someone tried to blame the victim for getting hit. But that's exactly what bullies do. They twist reality, gaslight their victims, and count on people being too tired or intimidated to fight back. Brenda had been doing it for years before she targeted me. She'd refined her tactics, knew exactly how to weaponize the HOA rules and people's general desire to avoid conflict. She just picked the wrong person this time. Or maybe I was just in the right place with the right resources and stubbornness to finally stop her. Either way, the neighborhood was better for it. On the 1-year anniversary of the accident, I got a card in the mail from Margaret. Inside, she'd written, "Thank you for your courage. My garbage cans and I are eternally grateful." It made me laugh, then tear up a little. That evening I sat on my front porch with a beer, watching the sun set over the desert hills. My truck was parked in the driveway, exactly where it had been that day, 3 feet from the curb, completely legal and properly positioned. No reflective tape required. Life in Meadowbrook Heights had returned to peaceful normalcy. We had the usual neighborhood dramas, disputes over barking dogs, debates about holiday decorations, complaints about teenagers driving too fast. But they were handled reasonably, with common sense and actual rules, not arbitrary authority. The community pool was popular in the summer. Kids played basketball in their driveways without fear of fines. People painted their front doors interesting colors. We had block parties and movie nights and a community garden that actually thrived. It was, finally, the neighborhood I'd hoped for when I moved in 3 years earlier. And every time I backed my truck out of the driveway, I remembered that afternoon, the crunch of impact, the absurdity of Brenda standing there blaming me for her mistake. I remembered thinking this was going to be a nightmare to deal with, never imagining it would lead to arrests, trials, legislative reform, and genuine community change. Sometimes I wondered what would have happened if I just paid the bogus fine, let it go, avoided the conflict. Life certainly would have been simpler, but simplicity isn't always the right choice. Sometimes the right choice is standing up and saying, no, this isn't acceptable, even when it's difficult, especially when it's difficult, because that's how change happens. Not through grand gestures or perfect plans, but through ordinary people deciding that enough is enough, that they won't be bullied or scammed or abused, that they'll fight for what's right even when it's inconvenient. Michael Torres told me once that I'd done more than save myself from a bogus fine. I'd saved an entire community from a tyrant and inspired reforms that would protect thousands of homeowners across the state. I didn't feel like a hero. I just felt like a guy who'd had his truck hit and wanted the person responsible to be held accountable. Everything else followed from that simple desire for basic justice. But maybe that's enough. Maybe most heroes are just ordinary people who refuse to back down when it mattered. My phone buzzed with a text from James, the guy with the basketball hoop. Game at the community center tomorrow. You in? Absolutely, I texted back. The next morning I met him and 5 other neighbors for pickup basketball. We played for 2 hours, trash talking and laughing, then grabbed breakfast at a diner on Gilbert Road. We talked about work and families and the upcoming HOA vote on new playground equipment. Normal stuff. Good stuff. This was what community was supposed to be. Later that week, I got a call from a homeowner in Chandler, a guy named Robert who'd seen news coverage of the Brenda Kensington case. His HOA president was pulling similar stunts: fake fines, harassment, possible embezzlement. I don't know what to do, Robert said. Everyone's afraid to speak up. I gave him Michael Torres's number and shared what I'd learned about documenting everything, finding allies, and using the legal system properly. It's going to be stressful, I warned him. But if your HOA president is breaking the law, someone needs to stop them. Did you ever regret it? Robert asked. Fighting back. I thought about my vandalized truck, the legal fees, the emergency board meetings, the trial. I thought about the stress and anger and exhaustion. Then I thought about Margaret's card, the reformed HOA, the kids playing basketball without fear, the legislative changes that would protect people I'd never meet. Not for a second, I said. 3 months later, Robert called again. His HOA president had been removed after an investigation revealed $12,000 in embezzled funds. Criminal charges were pending. Thank you, Robert said. Your case gave us a roadmap. We knew what to look for, how to document it, what laws applied. You made this possible. After we hung up, I sat in my living room feeling something I hadn't expected. Pride. Not the egotistical kind, but the quiet satisfaction of knowing I'd made a difference. My truck was parked outside, no longer just a vehicle but a reminder of what can happen when you refuse to be a victim. When you stand up to corruption and demand accountability. When you trust that justice, though slow and frustrating, can prevail. The rear bumper had been replaced, the paint matched perfectly, the taillight assembly new and bright. You'd never know it had been hit unless I told you the story. But I did tell the story. Often. To neighbors, to people facing similar situations, to journalists writing about HOA reform, to anyone who'd listen, because stories matter. They inspire and educate and remind us that ordinary people can accomplish extraordinary things when they refuse to accept injustice. That afternoon in May, when Brenda Kensington crashed into my truck, I'd been eating a ham sandwich, minding my own business, living my quiet suburban life. I had no idea that moment would define the next year of my life, would lead to criminal trials and legislative reform and genuine community transformation. But that's how life works sometimes. The moments that matter most are rarely the ones we plan for. They're the unexpected collisions, the unjust accusations, the moments when we have to choose between easy surrender and difficult resistance. I chose resistance, and I'd make the same choice again. The sun was setting as I finished my beer on the porch. Neighbors walked by walking dogs, kids rode bikes, someone was grilling in their backyard. Normal suburban sounds on a normal suburban evening in a neighborhood that had been through fire and come out stronger. My truck sat in the driveway, 3 feet from the curb, exactly where it belonged. No reflective tape, no bogus fines. No more Brenda Kensington, just peace, justice, and a community that had learned the cost of silence and the power of standing together. It was everything I'd wanted when I moved to Gilbert after my divorce. A fresh start, a quiet neighborhood, a place to call home. I got all that eventually. But first, I had to fight for it. And that made it all the more valuable, because homes aren't just buildings and property lines. They're communities built on trust and fairness and the shared understanding that we're all in this together. When someone threatens that, whether through abuse of authority or petty tyranny, we have a responsibility to push back, not just for ourselves, but for everyone who comes after us. That's what I learned from a crashed bumper and a fake fine for non-existent reflective tape. That's what Brenda Kensington, in her arrogance and corruption, inadvertently taught an entire community: stand up, speak out, document everything, find allies, use the system. Trust that justice, though imperfect, is worth fighting for. And maybe, just maybe, keep your truck exactly where it belongs, 3 feet from the curb, properly positioned, legally parked. No tape required.